This tale follows a boy cursed from the moment he entered the world. His mother cradles him, a fleeting moment of calm before chaos descends. At that very instant, his father receives news that obliterates their future. Thus, the boy is thrust into a life of relentless, crushing poverty. He scavenges for food, even resorting to eating weeds from the earth. Yet this unending string of misfortune is merely the beginning. It feels as if the universe conspires against him in petty, cruel ways. He's even wrongfully accused of stealing something he never touched, naturally. A casual stroll turns into a sudden, violent collision. Thus, his tragic saga of misfortune concludes at the tender age of 18. But his journey doesn't stop there. He finds himself in a bizarre white void. And he's not alone. A monstrous creature greets him with a ravenous snarl. The boy, confused and barefoot, stands against a gigantic white tiger. The beast lunges, a flash of raw predatory might. He's thrown back, completely unprepared for the overwhelming force. Yet somehow he retaliates, slamming the beast's head into the ground. The impact sends shockwaves through him, drawing blood. He gazes at his hand, now crackling with unfamiliar energy. The boy, once a victim of misfortune, now wears a mask of defiance. Apparently, dying does wonders for one's self-esteem. He stands firm, fist against fang, facing the monstrous creature. For a brief moment, he questions why he isn't fleeing for his life. The tiger responds with a deafening roar that shatters reality. His awareness dims, a single thought resonating from a distant past. Suddenly, a sharp voice pierces the void, demanding his focus. Our boy finds himself back in a classroom, stuttering a response as if he never left. The voice belongs to a girl with sharp teeth and an even sharper demeanor. She lounges with her feet up, criticizing his lack of enthusiasm. Apparently, his poor performance was so bad it made her break her smoking vow. He points out that she seems a bit too young to be smoking, which she takes surprisingly well. With a smug grin, she leans back, boldly declaring herself a god. And with her divine abilities, she offers him a second chance in a new realm. As a bonus, he'll receive 3 special skills, chosen entirely at random. However, our boy appears less than excited about this so-called generosity. The god stammers, admitting there might be a slight catch to the randomness. He stands up, demanding to know why all 3 of his new skills are utterly useless. She nonchalantly shifts the topic, struggling to recall his name. He introduces himself with an eerily calm smile, Muta Kushina. The god complains that even his name, Kushina, sounds far too unfortunate. Apparently, being called out by a deceased teenager rattles a god's composure. He explains that his unsettling smile is merely a byproduct of his misfortunes. The god is completely thrown off by his cheerful acceptance of a cursed existence. She wonders if he's attempting to summon good luck or just being incredibly creepy. Trying to regain control, she decides to clarify the skills she granted him. Skills, she elaborates, are a form of magic that defies the world's logic. She lists his 3 abilities: super regeneration, immortality, and an indomitable spirit. Kushina listens attentively as she begins to explain the powers he received at random. The first skill, super regeneration, is showcased on a severely injured arm. It enables instant recovery from any injury, no matter how grave. But there's a catch. The regeneration has limits, and exceeding them means death. She shifts to the next ability granted to him: immortality. It's quite a straightforward power. He simply won't age. Kushina listens intently, his face a blend of uncertainty and confusion. He raises a finger, noting that these abilities don't seem too terrible so far. The goddess assures him that the catch will become clear, especially with the 3rd ability. She presents the last and most troublesome power, indomitable spirit. Our protagonist stares back, unimpressed by the grandiose title. He requests clarification, and the god struggles to find the right explanation. To simplify things, she opts for a video game analogy. She explains that every living being has a health or stamina meter. When this meter depletes due to injury or illness, death occurs. However, at the brink of death, indomitable spirit activates. It brings you back, but you're left with just 1 health point. Kushina understandably feels a bit perplexed by this. He points out that it essentially means he can't die, just linger near death. Yet she cautions him to never, under any circumstances, use this ability. She concedes that his other 2 abilities are remarkable in their own right. Kushina sits there, his expression a blank canvas of misfortune. The god takes a long drag from her cigarette, heightening the tension. Because, she reveals, there's one last dreadful condition for it to function. The god discloses the final stipulation. He must be unafraid of death. Kushina repeats her words, baffled by such an impossible demand. She clarifies that fearing death is a basic survival instinct. As a deity, she's witnessed countless reincarnations throughout the ages, and she asserts that a human devoid of fear of death simply cannot exist. She looms over him, ridiculing his earlier take on these great abilities. She scoffs at the notion that this arrangement could be beneficial, because with these three powers, only one outcome is possible. Kushina's expression conveys everything. His legendary misfortune is now multifaceted. She delivers the final verdict. He won't survive in this new world. And with that final damning statement, Kushina is sent on his journey. He awakens not in a void, but sprawled in a vast sunlit glade. The god's words resonate in his mind, a death sentence tied to his lackluster skills. He gradually sits up, absorbing his new and supposedly final environment. Before him lies an expansive primal forest, wild and untamed. There's no denying it. This is the new world he was promised. And as far as he can see, an endless expanse of trees stretches out. But rather than despair, he finds solace in a familiar sight, plenty of weeds to munch on. He soon stumbles upon a stream, its clear water flowing over smooth stones. Despite the god's grim warning, Kushina feels a flicker of hope. Perhaps he can endure. A painful memory resurfaces, a girl apologizing for something she couldn't provide. He attempts to wash the thought away, splashing cool water on his face. For a fleeting moment, he allows the weight of his life to crash down on him. But he pushes it back, forcing that familiar, unsettling grin. He knows that if he stops smiling, his luck will only worsen. With renewed determination, Kushina starts exploring the area for useful supplies. His efforts quickly bear fruit as he spots some potentially edible mushrooms. Crouching down, he feels a genuine sense that things might just turn out okay. He reflects that this solitude is preferable to the scrutinizing gazes of others. Unfortunately, the local wildlife's judgment is far more immediate and direct. A gigantic, ape-like creature ambushes him with astonishing speed. Kushina's entire world is flipped upside down by the force of the strike. He's swatted away like a mere insect by a monstrous clawed hand. He crashes to the ground, the impact knocking the breath from his lungs. Dazed, he glances up to see his arm has been ripped from his body. The horrifying truth of his injury starts to dawn on him. A wave of excruciating pain engulfs him as he screams. So much for his glimmer of hope. His luck remains abysmal. The creature lands next to him, its massive form shaking the ground. Instead of delivering the final blow, the beast seems intrigued by its new plaything. Yet, amidst his suffering, something miraculous occurs. His arm violently reattaches, showcasing his incredible regeneration. The beast, unimpressed by the spectacle, slams its hand down once more. Kushina is pinned, the air forced from his lungs by the overwhelming weight. Bones crack under the immense pressure as the monster looms over him. It raises its hand, likely expecting to find nothing but a crimson stain. But Kushina remains, prompting the beast to seize him by the head. It lifts him like a trophy, roaring as it begins to tighten its grip. Kushina can only endure the pain, his vision starting to fade. The monster's grip constricts, intent on snuffing out his life. Suddenly, the beast releases him, letting Kushina drop from a great height. Instead of plummeting, Kushina clings to the creature's back. He bites into its flesh with a desperate primal ferocity. The god's final words echo in his mind. He was never meant to survive. He wonders if this is the end, if this is how his second life concludes. His body gives in, coughing up blood as his life slips away. The beast's jaws close around his head, poised to finish him. A sickening crunch reverberates through the forest as his neck snaps. Turns out Divine Reality TV exists, and Kushina is the main attraction. The god appears unfazed, concluding that his survival was impossible from the start. She laments that he was supposed to help her conquer a great challenge. Kushina's last thoughts are of his abilities, all utterly ineffective against this fate. The god observes, her face a mask of icy disappointment. He now realizes that his indomitable spirit was truly a worthless gift. With one final sickening snap, his world fades to black once again. She crushes her cigarette, dismissing him as just another unfortunate failure. Frustrated, she decides it's time to seek another reincarnation candidate. But a sudden event on her screen halts her in her tracks. A blood-soaked fist punches its way out from within the monster's throat. The god is left utterly speechless, her divine composure completely shattered. The beast chokes and gags, utterly confused by the chaos inside it. Its eyes roll back in terror, wide with a fear it has never experienced. An arm forces its way out, ripping through the monster's throat from within. Kushina's hand grips the beast's jaw, prying its mouth open with impossible strength. He bursts forth in a torrent of gore, screaming with a rage born from endless suffering. With one last desperate effort, he frees himself as the monster stumbles back. The colossal beast collapses, its life extinguished in a pitiful smoking heap. Kushina lies on its carcass, utterly exhausted, yet somehow miraculously alive. Back in her divine office, the god stares at her monitor, frozen in disbelief. She can only stammer, utterly unable to grasp how he survived certain death. The god realizes his incredible regeneration must have triggered just before his demise. She fights against the thought, her mind racing with disbelief. Then it dawns on her, he must have activated the indomitable spirit. But that can't be true. No ordinary human could wield that ability. In the forest, Kushina whispers a single tormenting question. He screams not in victory but in anguish, questioning why he was spared. The god can only gaze, utterly perplexed by his response. Kushina crumples, reliving the horror of his reincarnation. He received a set of seemingly worthless recovery abilities, and was quickly consumed by the local welcoming party. He was on the brink of the end he had always desired. He screams that he finally believed he could die. He rages against the cosmos, demanding to know how long he must endure. His desperate shouts are aimed at the god who brought him here. The god can only stutter, realizing this boy is utterly twisted. She understands he somehow utilized the impossible skill to return from death. The one who achieved this miracle is a boy who loathes his own existence. Apparently, being a deity doesn't mean you've seen everything. She's left pondering what kind of being she has unleashed upon this world. And Kushina can only gaze into the void, his name echoing in his thoughts. He contemplates the cruel, relentless joke that is his life. He screams into the emptiness, cursing the fate that always gives him the worst luck. He collapses, overwhelmed by the sheer injustice of it all. He questions how long he must suffer through a life he never desired. His desperate pleas resonate across dimensions, seeking answers from the god herself. She can't fathom it. He activated a skill that should have been impossible. The system verifies it. Indomitable spirit has indeed been triggered. And the one who performed this miracle is a boy who simply wanted it all to end. A boy who detests life so deeply that he's plunged into utter despair. The god can only label him as he is, a twisted, indomitable anomaly. He can only chuckle at the cruel irony of his existence. He screams into the woods, cursing his luck for always drawing the short straw. The god can only observe, completely stunned by his reaction. She can't believe he's labeling his own miracle as a losing ticket. The sheer ridiculousness of it all sends her into a fit of laughter. She turns away, questioning what kind of entity she has unleashed. And that man's name is Muta Kushina, the Indomitable. Her curiosity piqued, the god returns to her desk, searching for answers. Turns out Divine HR doesn't always perform its due diligence. And there it is, the resume from his previous wretched life. The god stares, her eyes wide as she finally examines his file. She's looking at the complete, unfiltered account of his life. A life characterized by relentless beatings and suffering. The file replays the moment of his death in excruciating detail. His consciousness fades, overwhelmed by unbearable agony. He lay there, bleeding out, while the world offered hollow reassurances. But the file reveals this wasn't his first encounter with tragedy. His parents argue, their lives ruined by the same cruel fate. And through it all, Kushina could only withstand the torment. His life story reads like a frequent visitor's card for the local hospital. The file reveals a young Kushina, bandaged and battered, lying in a hospital bed. A nurse peeks in, inquiring if the painkillers have finally taken effect. He quietly confesses they haven't worked. The pain remains a relentless throb. She informs him they're out of children's medicine. He'll just have to endure. Kushina accepts this with a resigned silence. He accepts everything. As another child wails down the corridor, the nurse urges him to rest. Suddenly, she announces his parents have arrived, and his eyes widen in shock. From behind the curtain, his parents ask the nurse about their son's condition. They express relief upon learning he is recovering well. But when they finally step in, their smiles are anything but comforting. They inquire about his well-being, their smiles feeling forced and empty. Kushina musters a weak smile in return, managing a faint nod. The curtain is drawn back, setting the scene for a grim family reunion. His mother asks if the official report regarding his accident was filed correctly. Kushina can only stare back, puzzled by her odd line of questioning. She sits beside him, stating the outcome should be clear. Her gentle touch suddenly turns aggressive as she grips his collar. She tears his gown open, questioning if his injuries were blamed on the accident. He can only nod, his back a canvas of bruises and old scars. Their relief isn't for his health, but that their story remains intact. His mother explains the silver lining, a hefty payout from the driver. The file indicates this wasn't his first accident, but a rehearsed scam. All his suffering was merely a means to an end for them. They even coerced him into shoplifting, using his youth as a shield. Their logic was simple. They were impoverished, and he was their tool. As they depart, they offer some truly remarkable parenting advice. Get hit by a fancier car next time. He came to realize that his parents viewed his very existence as a curse. Initially, they were just a struggling family, offering comfort and apologies. But soon, their desperation morphed into cruelty and abuse. The beatings became a horrifying routine of his childhood. He was conditioned to believe he deserved every strike he endured. The young boy was burdened by guilt he should never have carried. He would dream of a life where his misfortune didn't make him a burden. But those dreams shattered against the screaming reality of his life. His father's words echoed constantly. He was the root of all their suffering. He eventually recognized how wrong it was, but lacked the strength to resist. Instead, he was left to clean up the chaos his father created. He would lie there for hours, isolated in the ruins of his home. Curled into a ball, he tried to shrink himself as much as possible, and then he would quietly cleanse his spirit, as shattered as the glass on the floor. His small hand quivers, spilling water across the floor. He once yearned for their approval, but learned that obedience was merely a way to evade pain. He'd ask strangers online what they valued most in life. The answer was always the same: a child, love simply for existing. The very notion was a foreign, painful concept to him. His mother would return home from work exhausted and ready to lash out. She would straighten wire hangers to leave deeper welts on his back. His father would strike him for not laughing at a terrible joke. And so he practiced that unsettling smile, his only defense. He learned to navigate the wreckage left by his father's drunken rampages. His mother would strike him with a scorching frying pan. His father would curse him to death before shattering a bottle over his head. He faced threats with knives, then endured cuts to make a point. They submerged his head in running water until he almost drowned. Even in feverish sickness, he was kicked and told to keep going. The file details countless brutal episodes of his beatings. They screamed at him until their hatred echoed in his ears. He was pinned down and humiliated in the most vile ways. While already down, he was kicked, broken, and defenseless. The abuse formed a relentless, brutal rhythm throughout his life. He was trampled on, treated like mere dirt beneath their feet. He was beaten for any reason or sometimes for none at all. He was choked until everything faded into darkness. The list of atrocities was endless, a perpetual cycle of pain. Through it all, his eyes became colder and more vacant. Pain became something he accepted as an unavoidable reality. If he couldn't escape the suffering, he had to learn to adapt. He resolved that if he couldn't evade it, he would feel nothing. This was a defense mechanism forged from unimaginable suffering. He learned to disconnect, turning pain into a distant memory. He runs his fingers over his skin, testing the limits of his numbness. He reassures himself that if he feels nothing, nothing can harm him. He finally mastered the art of completely blocking out pain. He justified his entire childhood as a harsh form of training. His mother shows up, urging him to hurry and leave the hospital. Her smile fades as she reminds him of the chores awaiting him. Thus his life went on, a burden to those who inflicted his pain. The god possesses the unfiltered, complete record of his existence. Looks like someone finally did their homework, and the findings are chilling. This, she realizes, encapsulates the life of Muto Kushina. She leans back, acknowledging that his past was truly extraordinary. Then, a startling thought begins to take shape in her mind. She remembers the concept of indomitable spirit, a revival at death's edge. And there's one impossible requirement: the user must fear nothing, a condition she always thought was an unbreakable barrier for any living being. She understands it's not merely about choosing to be unafraid. The explanation ties back to the very essence of pain. Pain acts as a biological alarm, a vital function for survival. When the body suffers damage, the brain perceives it as a threat. This triggers intense emotions, sadness, anger, and even despair. These feelings, she explains, instinctively make any creature fear pain. It's a fundamental hardwired response, the fear of pain itself. Regardless of the threat's size, the instinct to survive kicks in. Without that fear, a being would ignore mortal danger until too late. Thus, the fear of pain is inherently tied to the fear of death. To lack fear of death means to have entirely conquered the fear of pain, but the god scoffs at this, deeming such a feat utterly impossible. She insists it's not just about choosing to endure the suffering. Even those who actively seek to end their own lives cannot escape the dread of the pain awaiting them in their final moments. A fear she realizes embodies the essence of survival instinct. But then she hesitates, a name lodged in her throat, Mutu Kushina. She examines his file, pondering if his harsh life allowed him to overcome pain. If he truly feels no pain, then death holds no terror for him. Back in the woods, reality crashes back into view. Kushina lies on the ground, the adrenaline from his miraculous revival finally subsiding. He groans, the pain a dull reminder of his survival beside the monster's remains. He trudges toward the stream, his ragged clothes a testament to the fight. He glances back at the beast, confirming its lifeless state. At least this monster can't kill him anymore. A single thought begins to crystallize in Kushina's mind. He chuckles, realizing his luck remains as dismal as ever. His thoughts drift back to his past life, a relentless, weary battle. He recalls how his existence felt like an endless, torturous journey, a never-ending, grueling trek through a barren wasteland. He was so consumed with merely surviving day by day that he never even entertained the thought of escape. But then one day, a profound realization hit him. He finally grasped that for him, death was the only true release. And now, standing over the monster's remains, that release has been denied. He recalls the words of the god, who said he had no luck this time. She asserted that with his 3 skills, survival was utterly impossible. But if she was mistaken, perhaps his chance at death isn't lost yet. Suddenly, an arrow zips past his head, interrupting his thoughts. It detonates with a deafening force, hurling him through the air. The explosion tears through him, a fresh wave of pain crashing over his body. The forest floor erupts in a cloud of dirt and debris. Before he can even hit the ground, a barrage of arrows descends from the trees. High above, a shadowy figure observes from a branch, bow in hand. The archer, a young woman, watches the boy she just attempted to annihilate. The archer looks down, realizing this boy is far more perilous than she anticipated. The god's monitor unveils the truth behind Kushina's demise in his first life. It wasn't a mere accident. A young Kushina stood before a bustling highway. His heart raced, not from fear, but with a desperate final determination. He intentionally stepped into the path of an oncoming truck. In the present, the archer can only gaze, labeling him a dangerous man. But her tone carries an odd, flustered uncertainty. Back in her office, the god's monitor finally goes dark. She slumps in her chair, grumbling about how this all unfolded. She can only conclude that Mutu Kushina is utterly reckless. The god reveals she didn't select just one reincarnator for this realm. Her other choice is a girl named Q in Runa. And back in the woods, that very girl is now pursuing Kushina. She halts, her eyes wide with sheer disbelief. The smoke from her explosive arrow begins to dissipate from the crater. Through the haze, Kushina's outline stands, noting that he's still alive. He casually comments that the explosion hurt less than being struck by a truck. Runa can only stare from the trees, baffled that he survived the blast. Frustrated, she draws her bow, refusing to accept this outcome. She releases another arrow, determined to finish him off for good. The arrow soars straight, a lethal projectile aimed for his heart. Yet Kushina snatches it from the air, mere inches from his eye. He appears taken aback by its abrupt arrival. From the treetops, Runa demands the beast show its true self. Kushina merely repeats her command, a peculiar expression on his face. In an instant, he stands before her, a chilling grin on his lips. She flinches in fear as he calmly states this is his smile. Her thoughts race back to the creature, shattering its skull. She ponders if he's an unfamiliar being from this odd new realm. Kushina simply listens, the phrase, another world, finally resonating. He recalls the deity's words, the pieces finally aligning. Runa affirms it, describing the same bratty, smoking god he encountered. And apparently, grumbling about a god leads to immediate pain. The god screams Runa's name, a ghostly arrow protruding from her head. To make things worse, she realizes she's out of cigarettes. She crushes the empty pack, her divine composure completely shattered. So much for her no-smoking vow. Time to buy a whole carton. She storms off, thoroughly fed up with the entire situation. She grumbles that every reincarnator she picks is just a handful. Back in the woods, Runa remains confused, demanding to know his identity. Kushina simply gazes back, his expression as vacant as ever. Runa realizes they might share a bond, both chosen by that god. But in her moment of clarity, her foot trips over a stray root. A sudden yelp rings out from the trees, followed by a loud thud. The elegant archer tumbles through the air, lacking any grace. Kushina is left puzzled, wondering where his would-be attacker vanished. He locates her and inquires if she's all right, cautioning her about the roots. Turns out she's ensnared by a gigantic constricting snake. Kushina can only stare, trying to comprehend this strange twist. The creature tightens its grip, poised to crush its new prey. Kushina is momentarily shocked by the sudden violent ambush. The enormous serpent coils around Runa, squeezing with immense force. The pressure mounts, threatening to shatter her ribs with each movement. She fights against its hold, screaming for the beast to let her go. Her face twists in pain as the air is forced from her lungs. Kushina snaps back to reality, calling out to the trapped archer. She urgently shouts for his help, her pride as an assassin forgotten. The snake's scales shift as it tightens its grip, a slow execution. Spikes protrude from the creature's back, adding torment to her plight. A sickening crack resounds as her bones begin to yield under pressure. Runa's desperate pleas for help resonate as the snake constricts tighter. Kushina freezes, realizing the danger is far greater than he imagined. She wonders how anyone could possibly confront a monster of this scale. His thoughts race, but panic clouds his mind, leaving him paralyzed. He hesitates, questioning why he should even attempt to save her. After all, she's the one who just tried to turn him into a human dartboard. A dark thought crosses his mind. He'd have thanked her if she'd actually killed him. But despite his own feelings, he takes a single determined step forward. A painful memory resurfaces, his mother's voice reminding him that no one helps the dying. He recalls the sensation of being broken and alone, devoid of hope for rescue. Runa's cries are silenced as the serpent constricts tighter. His mother's voice lingers in his mind, rationalizing her harshness. She screams for him to rescue her, her urgency drowning out everything else. Her cries slice through his paralysis and uncertainty. With a final desperate roar, she calls for someone to save her. The enormous serpent continues its slow, merciless execution high above. In that instant, something within Kushina finally clicks. He bolts forward, rushing at the beast without a strategy. He realizes he must act, anything to halt this. He understands all too well the agony of calling for a savior who never arrives. His body reacts instinctively, primal urges overriding logic. He leaps into action before thought can catch up, a response born from suffering. A single frantic thought races through his mind. He must save her. Consequences can wait. Right now, someone is in dire need. He knows it's a long shot, that he's powerless. Yet he strikes. His fist collides with the creature's scales in a reckless, desperate hit. To his astonishment, the punch actually seems to have an impact. The serpent recoils, roaring in a blend of agony and shock. Its coils loosen, sending both Kushina and Runa tumbling from the force. Runa crashes to the ground, gasping for breath, finally liberated from the beast's hold. Runa stares at the colossal, motionless serpent, utterly bewildered. Her gaze shifts to Kushina, her mind struggling to comprehend what just unfolded. She asks him what he just did, but he appears just as lost. Kushina glances at his own fist, a portrait of utter bewilderment. Then the pain hits him, a delayed response that sends him howling. Runa can only inquire if he was the one who brought down the beast. Kushina can't respond, still reeling from shock and the ache in his hand. He gestures at the carcass, grumbling that it fell from a single weak punch. He examines his own hand, questioning if he somehow triggered this impossible result. The horrifying realization strikes him. One of his useless skills must have activated. The massive serpent lies still, its head resting on the fractured ground. Kushina stares at his fist, unable to fathom that his feeble punch caused this. He grapples with understanding what just transpired, his mind spinning from the absurdity. They stand together in the quiet glade, encircled by the vanquished monster. Runa breaks the stillness, her voice soft and uncertain. She bows her head, offering a sincere, albeit shy, thank you for her rescue. She even apologizes for, attempting to kill him just moments ago. Kushina is completely taken aback by this unexpected show of gratitude. Runa confesses she mistook him for just another forest monster. But now she sees the truth, asking if he's a reincarnator like her. Runa pieces it together. His revival and the serpent's defeat must stem from his abilities. Yet Kushina refutes it, claiming his powers are solely for self-healing. She gazes at the slain beast, pondering what could have possibly brought it down. Runa thoughtfully enumerates his 3 gifts: super regeneration, immortality, and unyielding spirit. She concludes that none of those abilities should possess any offensive capability. But her words trigger a memory for Kushina, recalling her own peculiar talent. He inquires about her knack for conjuring arrows from thin air, quite the useful trick. In response, Runa extends her hands as a radiant light begins to coalesce. A bow materializes from nothingness, showcasing her own divine gift. Kushina can only watch in awe, realizing her power is vastly different from his. She reveals her ability is called creation, enabling her to craft anything she comprehends. Offering him a new shirt, she attempts to make amends after, well, trying to kill him. Kushina is utterly flustered, managing to stutter a thank you. He then inquires if the explosive arrows were also her doing, and she looks away, guilt-ridden. She confesses it was merely a basic explosive attached to an arrow, a childish prank. With the tension finally eased, she introduces herself properly as Runa. Kushina, pulling on the new shirt, confirms his origin from Japan and shares his name. Runa then asks how to write his name, a peculiar question given the circumstances. He spells it out in the dirt, and she declares that for now, they are not foes. She gazes at the trees, stating they can't linger in this monster-ridden forest. Runa proposes they seek a village together for safety. However, Kushina quickly declines, saying he'll skip the search for civilization. Her shock at his refusal is palpable, demanding to know his reasoning. Instead of responding, he calmly grabs a thick vine hanging from a branch. With a chilling grin, he slips it around his neck, announcing he'll just die here. Casually, he kicks the rock from beneath him to hang himself. Runa springs into action, tackling him and yanking him free from the makeshift noose. She yells at him, urging him not to rush into ending it all. Kushina grumbles that she interrupted him, explaining he dislikes having an audience. He coldly questions what right she has to meddle in his life choices. Runa's eyes widen, reminding him they've both already faced death once. She argues that this new world, monsters included, is a valuable second chance. A harsh flashback reveals her demise, a cloaked figure and a chilling blade. The memory remains fresh, bringing her to tears as she relives the horror. She admits she can't grasp his despair, but she has a suggestion. If he's so set on dying, why not try battling the forest monsters? Kushina can only stare, utterly perplexed by her bizarre reasoning. He points out the glaring flaw. He can't die, even if beheaded. Runa's determination solidifies. She wants to live and refuses to die again. She then asks Kushina what kind of power he possesses to take down a beast like this. Runa acknowledges it's a selfish request, using him for her own survival. She bows deeply, formally pleading for his assistance. With tears streaming down her cheeks, she begs him to safeguard her. Kushina is utterly taken aback, unable to process her urgent plea. He can't comprehend how anyone could desire to live so fiercely in this terrifying world. He glances at his own hand, the one that somehow fell to a monster. Turning away, he reminds her that with his abilities, even beheading offers no escape. Yet her raw, desperate will to survive has clearly resonated with him. He has no idea how he defeated the snake, or if he can truly protect her. But with quiet determination, Kushina agrees to give it a shot. Runa is left utterly speechless by his unexpected consent. Kushina mutters that he'd prefer not to shoulder this kind of responsibility. But Runa's mood instantly brightens, thanking him with a radiant smile. Our boy is completely thrown off, unaccustomed to such genuine gratitude. He can only stammer, overwhelmed by the sudden change in their dynamic. She extends her hand, ready to solidify their new, very unusual partnership. He reluctantly accepts, and for the first time, he has an ally. With the agreement made, Runa immediately shifts into survival mode. However, the first item on the agenda brings a wave of harsh reality. She panics, realizing they must camp in this monster-infested death trap. Runa's fear meets Kushina's calm acceptance. He's accustomed to rough nights. Yet Runa steps up, boldly stating her experience as a Girl Scout. She outlines their mission: locate water, food, and a secure spot for a fire. Thus, the unlikely pair sets off through the perilous forest. Kushina spots a mushroom, wisely opting to avoid it. He knows a risk when he sees one. Their efforts bear fruit as they stumble upon a small cave, ideal for the night. Kushina attempts to ignite a fire the traditional way, only to be reprimanded by Runa. She reminds him of their skills, and while she could use her explosives, she has a far more refined method, conjuring a lighter from thin air. With a quick click, she demonstrates how simple it is to create fire in this realm. But her fancy lighter merely clicks, failing to spark a flame. Frustrated, she tosses it aside, realizing it's completely out of fuel. She can conjure the lighter, but not the gas to ignite it, just details. She mutters a few choice words for the deity who brought them here. Kushina can only observe, utterly perplexed by the unfolding situation. But their fire-starting troubles are abruptly interrupted as the cave begins to shift. A gigantic foot crashes down, revealing their shelter is no cave at all. It's a colossal rhino-like golem just awakening. The two reincarnators stand frozen, gazing up at their furious new landlord. Runa snaps back to reality first, yelling at Kushina that they must flee immediately. Without hesitation, Kushina pushes Runa out of harm's way, but he's not quick enough to save himself as a spike pierces his back. Runa looks up in horror, realizing he took the hit meant for her. The massive spike lifts him off the ground, his body going limp. He hangs there, impaled and defenseless before the enormous creature. He gazes down at the wound, a gaping void where his chest once was. Runa can only scream, utterly powerless to assist him. Yet even while impaled, Kushina grabs her, fully embracing his new role as her bodyguard. The golem roars, charging forward with unstoppable force. And the ground erupts into a forest of lethal razor-sharp spikes. Runa tumbles through the air, narrowly escaping the deadly spike forest. Kushina crashes to the ground, having pushed her out of danger just in time. She can only stare in sheer terror, her mind blank with fear. Kushina is hurled away, tossed aside like a rag doll by the force of the attack. Runa rushes to his side, desperately asking what their next move is. But her panic is abruptly halted by a chilling sight. Kushina looks down at her, wearing that unsettling smile from his past. He calmly reminds her of his promise to keep her safe. And with that, he charges headlong at the rampaging golem. Runa can only scream after him, questioning if he even has a plan. Runa realizes this beast is on an entirely different level than the others. But the gaping wound in Kushina's chest is already beginning to seal. He leaps into the air, propelling himself over the deadly spike forest. A wild, determined glint fills his eyes as he closes the gap. He crashes through the spikes with his bare hands, disregarding the pain. The wound in his chest disappears entirely, his regeneration kicking into overdrive. He presses on, an unstoppable force against an impossible adversary. Runa screams that no matter how quickly he heals, he won't reach it. And she's right. He's shredded by another barrage of spikes. His body is utterly obliterated before he can land a single hit. Even in pieces, his mind clings to one thought: not yet. He reassembles, mocking the creature, daring it to finish him off properly. His promise flashes in his mind, pondering what death means for her. Blood spills from his mouth as he questions if Runa could ever forgive his betrayal. A sinister grin spreads as he recalls never being forgiven for anything. He figures that if he's dead, a broken promise won't matter. Just as he surrenders, something whizzes past his head. An arrow seemingly from nowhere pierces the golem's back. It explodes with a thunderous blast, staggering the giant. Kushina turns to see Runa on a spike, having taken the shot herself. Runa stands firm, bow drawn, ready for another shot. She knows she can't harm it, but she can grab its attention. She conjures a handful of small tops designed to create noise. The tops scatter around the golem, generating a loud clamor. The creature is briefly disoriented, distracted by the noise. That's the opening Kushina needs to leap onto its back. He throws a desperate punch, searching for a weak point. He glances back, a shocking realization hitting him. She just saved him. Runa shouts at him, asking why he didn't just leave her behind. But Kushina knows that if he runs, she'll be left to die. He yells that he won't let her be taken, driving his fist forward. Yet his hand shatters against the golem's unyielding hide. Runa can only watch, realizing its defense is impossibly strong. The beast strikes back with a punch of solid rock. The force sends him flying, his body crushed by the impact. She can only call his name, trapped in a forest of deadly spikes. She wonders why he continues to fight, seemingly unaware of his can't-die routine. But Kushina roars, channeling a lifetime of pain into this moment. He prepares for another strike, his fist glowing with unknown energy. This time, his punch lands with the force of a meteor. Runa watches, realizing he's genuinely trying to keep his promise. His fist connects, and the sound of shattering rock reverberates through the forest. The golem's entire arm bursts into a shower of stone and dust. Kushina follows through, his face a mask of desperate determination. The massive limb is reduced to nothing but rubble. Runa calls his name, fearing he's been buried in the debris. But from the wreckage, a single hand emerges, refusing to stay down. A wave of relief washes over her as she realizes he's still alive. Kushina pulls himself free, complaining about a headache as if he didn't just punch a mountain. She can only stare in disbelief, amazed he actually defeated the monster. Kushina gazes at his own fist, the shock of his actions finally sinking in. He looks at the rubble, barely able to believe he caused this destruction. He recalls how his first punch shattered his own arm against its hide, but a new, terrifying thought begins to form in his mind. What if the more damage he endures, the stronger he actually becomes? As the golem's rocky shell crumbles, the ground gives way beneath him. He's completely caught off guard by the monster's sudden collapse. The dust settles to reveal a smaller core version of the beast, and a very naked Kushina, because priorities. Runa can only watch, screaming that he shattered the rock of Reno's horn. And Kushina finally realizes the boy who was pierced and broken is now a weapon. The beast's core is exposed, revealing a smaller rhino stripped of its rocky shell. Runa wonders if the creature has been weak all along. But then her eyes widen as a more horrifying realization dawns on her. It's not weakness in the monster, it's that Kushina is somehow becoming stronger. The rhino breathes heavily, its broken horn a sign of its dwindling power. The creature stumbles forward, utterly drained from the lengthy fight. Finally, it collapses, its energy completely depleted. Runa sees this as their opportunity. Kushina can actually take it down now. Kushina gazes at his fist, a silent understanding washing over him. He tightens his grip, prepared to unleash the power born from his own ruin. Runa observes, her face a blend of wonder and sheer fear. The weakened rhino emits a low, guttural growl from the shadows. Its last act of defiance is a desperate, earth-shaking roar. A wave of searing heat erupts from its mouth, forcing Runa to shield her eyes. She realizes the temperature is climbing, threatening to incinerate her. Yet Kushina charges through the flames, his determination unwavering. He thrusts his fist forward, delivering a decisive strike aimed at the beast's head. His eyes blaze with a lifetime of suffering, now concentrated into a single point. Runa can only watch, tears streaming as the heat becomes unbearable. The world flashes white as his fist collides with the monster. The shockwave propels Runa backward, shielding herself from the intense heat. Through her tears, she can only witness the impossible unfold before her. Kushina's punch lands, a definitive end to the monster's rampage. The beast's head shatters into countless fragments of stone. Its massive form is hurled backward, showcasing his newfound strength. A close-up reveals the complete devastation of the creature's head. The golem's core crashes to the ground, its life force snuffed out. It lies still, a defeated shell in the now quiet forest. Kushina stands over the fallen creature, his vow finally realized. He looks down, panting, trying to grasp the fact that he actually triumphed. Kushina stands hunched over, utterly drained from the conflict. His fist is raw and bleeding, a testament to the incredible power he unleashed. He flexes his hand, still trying to understand what he has become. He turns to Runa, reassuring her that the threat has finally passed. She can only stare back, her mind still spinning from the battle. The battlefield is quiet, scattered with the remnants of the colossal golem. Runa looks down, her expression concealed as she processes the aftermath. A strange hollow laugh escapes her lips, shattering the silence. She finally voices what they're both thinking. Kushina is terrifyingly powerful. And then she collapses, as surviving a monster fight is apparently exhausting. Kushina rushes to her side, asking if she's hurt. But Runa insists she's okay, claiming her family never cries. Yet a single tear rolls down Kushina's cheek. Runa sits up, suddenly angry and flustered by his reaction. She shouts at him not to look at her with such a pitiful expression. Especially, she adds, while he's completely and utterly naked. Our boy scrambles to cover himself, the post-battle reality finally hitting him. Runa continues her rant, telling him to stop staring at her like that. She then conjures a new set of clothes, tossing them at him impatiently. Kushina can only stare, utterly overwhelmed by the emotional roller coaster. He appreciates the clothes, but this isn't quite the style he envisioned. Runa sheepishly confesses she unintentionally crafted him her own outfit. Exhausted, they stand together in the clearing, the fight finally concluded. Later that evening, they establish a small camp to endure the night. Now dressed appropriately, Kushina volunteers to take the first night watch. Runa declines, urging him to rest while he has the chance. She admits she needs solitude to process everything that has transpired. He quietly agrees, not wanting to press the issue any further. He nestles into the sleeping bag she crafted, observing her by the fire. He reflects that being used is something he's grown accustomed to. Yet gratitude and receiving clothes are feelings he's never experienced. As he tries to make sense of it all, Runa maintains her watch by the fire. She contemplates his abilities, the raw magical power he possesses. It's a frustrating realization, but she knows she was ineffective against that beast. Her thoughts keep returning to Kushina's extraordinary powers. Then, a chilling thought dawns on her. It's not merely that he's powerful, he's actively growing stronger. She recalls his abilities, super regeneration, healing him instantly. Immortality, meaning he won't age or die from natural causes. An unyielding spirit that brings him back from the brink of death. Runa remembers the god's words. His 3 skills were meant to be useless. She recalls how his initial punch against the golem only shattered his own hand. Yet, as he was torn apart and reformed, his strikes became incredibly powerful. Even his speed improved, eventually matching the beast's furious charge. She realizes this power must stem from his skills, but they shouldn't function this way. She starts to wonder if those supposedly useless skills are truly duds. A new theory begins to form in her mind, one she can't dismiss. What if the skills that seem ineffective alone create something new when combined? Meanwhile, Kushina sleeps soundly, blissfully ignorant of his own frightening potential. She realizes that each time he dies, he doesn't just return, he comes back stronger. The next morning, a new day breaks over the tranquil forest. Kushina stirs slowly, the previous night's events feeling dreamlike. He jolts awake, realizing he dozed off and neglected his watch. He glances over to find the campfire has long since extinguished. For a brief moment, he's disoriented, forgetting he's no longer in his former world. But a sudden movement yanks him back to reality. He looks up to see Runa looming over him, a massive rock in her hands. She questions if he intentionally fell asleep, trying to get himself killed. Her words trigger another memory. His mother, always furious, always annoyed. He recalls how she would unleash her frustrations on him. The memory continues, showing his mother towering over his sleeping form. But after her outbursts, a wave of deep guilt would wash over her. In those moments, she would hold him tightly, desperate and pained. Young Kushina could only apologize, not even grasping the reason why. She would weep, pleading for his forgiveness for being such a dreadful mother. And seeing her tears, he could never truly bring himself to hate her. Yet it was a cruel cycle of anger followed by remorse. He learned early that a person's heart is a fickle, unpredictable thing. It can shift from ally to foe in an instant, a truth he knows all too well. And because he understands this so profoundly, Runa looms over him, rock in hand, and he's not even shocked. A heavy sense of inevitability settles in as he thinks, "Here we go again." He addresses the girl, who seems oddly fixated on ending his life. He tells her it's okay if she wants to kill him. He was ready to go anyway. Runa is completely taken aback by his total disregard for his own safety. She hurriedly tries to clarify that this isn't what it seems at all, though she concedes that, yes, the situation doesn't look great. Kushina is left utterly perplexed by this strange turn of events. She drops the rock, saying she had a theory about his abilities to test. He simply accepts her apology, thinking this is just how some people behave. Kushina inquires about the theory she has regarding his abilities. Runa explains that his 3 ineffective skills are interacting oddly. She asks if he's even aware that his body is becoming stronger. Kushina can only shake his head, completely unaware of his own boost. His mind flashes back to the fight, recalling the incredible force of his fists. Runa presses him, questioning if he genuinely hasn't noticed the shift. She points out that despite lacking strength-enhancing skills, he can defeat monsters. She concludes that under certain conditions, he's somehow gaining strength. The realization hits Kushina hard, leaving him momentarily speechless. Meanwhile, back in her office, the god has clearly replenished her favorite indulgence. She's furious that the convenience store clerk forced her to use the brand name. And to make matters worse, they even had the audacity to ask for ID. She flops into her chair, sarcastically advising her subordinates to learn from her mistakes. Back in the woods, Kushina is still trying to comprehend Runa's theory. But before he can ask more questions, Runa suddenly lunges at him. She grabs the same rock she had held over his head just moments ago. With a sickening crunch, she slams it down on his unsuspecting arm. Kushina's eyes widen, a mix of shock and sudden sharp pain flooding in. Runa raises the rock again, her brutal experiment clearly far from over. She brings it down once more, testing the limits of his strange power. Runa announces she's going again, the rock still ready for another hit. Kushina calmly tells her there's no need to be so tense about it. She insists she'll keep going until she gets a clear result from her test. With a determined shout, she raises the rock high above her head again. The sound of stone striking bone reverberates through the otherwise silent clearing. Runa is panting, sweating, clearly giving her all in this brutal trial. Again and again, she brings the rock down with a sickening, repetitive force. Kushina simply watches, his face a mask of weary, detached acceptance. She's utterly drained, her breath coming in ragged, desperate gasps. The scientist in this duo is clearly more fatigued than the actual test subject. With one last desperate shout, she brings the rock down again. Kushina's arm tenses, bracing for yet another jarring impact. But this time, it's the rock that shatters, not his arm. Kushina can only stare, shocked as stone fragments fly past his face. Runa is equally stunned, her experiment yielding an impossible outcome. His arm remains completely unscathed while her weapon lies shattered at his feet. The once solid rock is now reduced to a pile of useless debris. Runa glances at her own hand, her brutal hypothesis finally validated. She asks Kushina if he's ever heard of the term super recovery. He assumes it's just another skill, but she quickly corrects him. Kushina stares blankly, his mind slowly processing the information. Runa clarifies that it's a natural occurrence, a fundamental healing mechanism of the human body. She quickly teaches him about biology. When you exercise, muscle fibers get damaged. However, as that tissue repairs, it doesn't merely fix itself, it comes back even stronger. This phenomenon, she notes, is termed super recovery. Who knew attempted murder included a science lesson? But she isn't finished, adding that this concept extends beyond just muscles. Even broken bones will heal to become tougher than they were before. Naturally, a regular person has limits. A severed limb is permanently lost. She gazes at Kushina, emphasizing that he is far from ordinary. His ability, super regeneration, allows him to recover even from complete annihilation. She elaborates that each time he heals, his body reconstructs itself to be more resilient. Kushina is taken aback by this insight, but Runa cautions him about a significant flaw. She goes on to explain that his regeneration relies on rapid, repeated cell division. Now, for a brief biology lesson, normal cells can only divide a limited number of times before dying. Back in her office, the god remembers the catch. His regeneration has a cap, and exceeding it means permanent death. Yet Runa raises two fingers, revealing that his second ability, immortality, completely nullifies that limitation. Kushina is left speechless as she explains that being ageless eliminates the natural cap on his cell division. Still, she concedes that even with those two powers, if he dies, he should remain dead. But Runa's eyes blaze with intensity as she insists his abilities can even defy death, and it all hinges on the final piece of the puzzle, his unyielding spirit. She clarifies that his wish to die ironically activates the skill that resurrects him. Kushina can only gaze, the weight of her revelations crashing down on him. Runa continues, detailing how his three abilities function in perfect harmony. He struggles to understand, his mind unable to grasp this impossible reality. Meanwhile, back in her office, the god observes the entire exchange unfold. Her demeanor shifts from casual watching to sheer, unfiltered panic. The terrifying truth of her blunder finally hits her. Looks like someone's in for a rough performance review. Kushina remains confused, trying to piece together the conclusion she's guiding him toward. Runa lays it out plainly. The more he dies, the stronger he becomes. Every time he's shattered, his regeneration doesn't just fix him, it enhances him. Runa concludes her explanation, her tone serious and low. His immortality skill permits endless cell division, erasing all natural boundaries. And his indomitable spirit allows him to survive any lethal blow with just one hit point. Kushina stutters, the terrifying implications finally sinking in. Yet his response isn't one of shock or wonder, it's something far more disturbing. A wide manic grin spreads across his face, a portrait of utter madness. Runa can only watch in horror, questioning what kind of monster she has unleashed. Kushina hides his face, a broken laugh escaping him. He's surprisingly calm about his newfound divinity. Runa is completely thrown off, his strange reaction overshadowing her own worries. Then he unleashes a raw, anguished scream that reverberates through the forest. His scream morphs into a frantic rant about why he can never die properly. He recalls all his near-fatal experiences, even surviving things that should have ended him. Runa can only stare, utterly bewildered by his sudden violent outburst. He curses the god of fate for this cruel joke, for making him stronger through pain. A chilling thought strikes him. Was the god he encountered the one behind this? Runa attempts to soothe him, but he's too engulfed in his despair to hear her. But then, his downward spiral is abruptly interrupted by a dreadful realization. He deduces that if external injuries can't kill him, he'll need to get inventive. He snatches a nearby mushroom and pops it into his mouth without a second thought. Runa can only watch in horror as he attempts to poison himself to death. His expression twists, beads of sweat forming as the poison starts to take effect. Runa panics, yelling at him to spit it out before it's too late. Instead of collapsing, his face shifts to one of pure, blissful astonishment. He presents the half-eaten mushroom, declaring it unbelievably tasty. Taking another bite, he insists it's the finest thing he's ever tasted. He even claims to feel better, completely forgetting his earlier despair. Runa can only watch in disbelief as he eagerly searches for more. She thinks of her own hunger, too frightened to eat any local creatures. Kushina points at other mushrooms, cheerfully noting they appear to be breathing. Finally, Runa realizes the mushroom is toxic and he's hallucinating. Kushina's eyes swirl, his mind completely lost in the mushroom's potent effects. In his vision, Runa has morphed into a massive muscle-bound warrior. He excitedly pleads with this new, fearsome Runa to end his life with her strength. Then he's off, racing through the forest at an unbelievable poison-fueled pace. Runa chases after him, desperately trying to remind him of his promise to protect her. For a fleeting moment, a glimmer of clarity seems to return to his gaze. He keeps running and spots what appears to be a settlement in the distance. Initially, she dismisses it, thinking it's just another of his wild delusions. But it's real. They've stumbled upon a stone tower and a massive wooden gate. A guard calls down from a window, offering to open the gate for the weary travelers. The gate swings open, revealing a cobblestone path and a world beyond the woods. They step into a lively town, a welcome sight after days in the wilderness. The two stroll through the streets, finally surrounded by civilization. Runa beams, her face lighting up at the sight of a real town. Kushina agrees, though his face is now marred by a nasty rash from the mushroom. He reassures her the poison has faded, but she notes his skills must be working overtime. The wave of relief overwhelms Runa, causing her to collapse from sheer fatigue. A large, calloused hand reaches down, offering to help her stand. She gratefully accepts the stranger's kindness, a rare occurrence in this world. But her rescuer is a battle-hardened warrior, a severed monster head draped over his shoulder. So much for a warm welcome. Runa is utterly terrified by the warrior's imposing presence. Yet his gruff demeanor gives way to a booming, hearty laugh inside a local tavern. He asks if they truly mistook his group for monsters from the forest. Soon, they're all sharing a meal, the adventurer apologizing for their intense vibe. Runa struggles to hold back tears, relishing her first real meal in days. The warrior explains they are seasoned mercenaries, noting the two kids are clearly novices. He then pulls out a flyer, inquiring what they know about the forest they just left. It's a bounty for a creature so powerful that even 10 veterans couldn't take it down. Kushina's eyes widen, a dangerous and potentially lucrative idea forming in his mind. The warrior warns him that if he encounters this beast, his only choice is to flee. The warriors laugh, cautioning them that it's too early for rookies to be earning coin here. A waitress approaches the table, offering another round of drinks for the lively group. She seems worried, asking if they're certain they can afford such a large order. The mercenaries continue eating, boasting about their easy monster hunts for the day. But in an instant, the warriors are gone, dashing out of the tavern without settling their bill. Runa and Kushina are left stunned as the waitress turns her gaze toward them. She presents them with a towering stack of plates, the bill for the entire table. With a stern look, she demands to know just how much money they possess. The horrifying reality of their situation dawns on our two broke heroes. Welcome to civilization, kids. Runa can only confess the truth. They don't have a single coin to their names. A gigantic monster's remains are dragged across the tavern's floor. The waitress and other customers can only gawk, utterly shocked by the offering. And just like that, their debt is settled, leaving the tavern behind. A hefty bag of coins is dropped, their payment for the monster's remains. Kushina inspects the unfamiliar currency, their first earnings in this realm. He informs Runa that while he's uncertain of its worth, it more than paid their tab. He's impressed that Runa has already grasped the local economy. She snaps back that it's simple when your partner can effortlessly defeat fierce beasts. She gestures to a bounty board, lamenting the riches they missed from the monsters he already vanquished. Kushina realizes that being a magnet for unkillable monsters has its financial advantages. Runa sighs, regretting that they can't even recall where they left the corpses. But Kushina views the bounty board as a menu of potential targets. He reflects on his promise to Runa, a vow that prevents him from seeking death. He glances at his hand, realizing monsters are becoming less intimidating. What if he continues fighting and regenerating just to honor his word to her? A chilling realization strikes him: he might actually become unkillable. Their existential crisis is abruptly interrupted by a small, timid voice. A young girl approaches, inquiring if they're the strong ones who can slay monsters. With pleading eyes, she implores them to kill the beast that took her father's life. The monster in question is the wind tiger, a top-tier predator from their own woods. The girl shares that her father was a strong and respected adventurer, yet even his prowess was no match for the beast that claimed his life. Runa listens as the girl pleads for them to avenge her fallen father. She empathizes with the desire for vengeance, but the danger is far too great. She pulls Kushina aside, needing a moment to reason with him. Runa cautions him that this wind tiger is far more powerful than anything they've encountered. He agrees they shouldn't risk it for a stranger, then decides they'll go for it anyway. Runa is left utterly speechless by his bewildering change of heart. He turns back, reminding her of the one thing he's always desired. A wild grin spreads across his face. This monster might finally end him for good. Runa is left stammering, completely taken aback by his death wish. She warns him that he has no clue what he's up against with the wind tiger. She yells that every time it kills him, he'll just regenerate and grow stronger. Eventually, she warns he'll become so powerful that nothing can take him down. The words strike him hard, the horrifying irony finally sinking in. He doubles down, deciding he just needs to die quicker before it's too late. But Runa points out a crucial flaw in his desperate plan. His unyielding spirit only works because he doesn't fear death. She tells him plainly, no matter how hard he tries, he can't die. The truth finally shatters him, and he screams in utter helpless despair. Runa stands before the broken boy, her expression inscrutable. She continues her thought, laying out the harsh logic of his power. If he ever finds joy in living, his abilities will simply cease to function. The word joy lingers in the air, a concept he can't even begin to comprehend. He desperately asks how he's supposed to discover something he's never experienced. For the first time, Runa appears to be at a loss for words. She tells him that finding the will to live ultimately rests on his shoulders. She explains that his world has shrunk too much, fixated solely on death. She urges him to look beyond his suffering and observe the world around him. And for the first time, a flicker of something other than despair shines in his eyes. Her words resonate, urging him to truly observe his surroundings. He faces her, stating there's something crucial he must know first. He questions if it genuinely matters to her whether he lives or becomes invincible. Runa deflects, suddenly fixated on their accommodations and budget. He informs her that she can fend for herself now, no longer needing his shield. He presses her, demanding to know why she's trying to thwart his plans. Runa stands speechless, unable to articulate a coherent reply. Finally, she stutters that she's not as heartless as he believes, though that's debatable. She concedes that despite his oddities, they share a bond as companions from the same realm. Locking eyes with him, she expresses her desire for him to find happiness. Her words strike him, a flicker of genuine surprise crossing his otherwise vacant gaze. Runa scoffs, calling him out for inquiring after plotting his own end. Kushina clenches his fist, grappling with the words for this unfamiliar emotion. He quietly wonders if dodging this confrontation will truly shield him from misery. Runa is taken aback, unprepared for his sincere, vulnerable inquiry. She exclaims that she can't possibly have the answer to such a question. Kushina can only gaze, bewildered by her sudden fervent outburst. She insists she can't make reckless promises regarding his future joy. Yet, she admits with a blush that his question did bring her a bit of joy. She realizes that perhaps, just perhaps, she misjudged her understanding of him. Runa smiles, offering a simple yet profound insight. She explains that not wanting to be unhappy is merely another way of expressing a desire for happiness. The concept hits Kushina like a physical blow. Could it really be that straightforward? Their philosophical discussion is interrupted by the little girl who has been waiting patiently. Runa is caught off guard, scrambling to explain their adult conversation. But Kushina turns to the girl and, with a heavy heart, informs her they can't accept the job. Runa is shocked, grabbing him and demanding to know why he's backing out now. He disregards her, his focus on the girl as he offers a quiet apology. The child's expression falls, her last glimmer of hope shattering before her. Instead of crying, she bows deeply, a desperate silent plea for them to reconsider. Runa stands in the alley, observing Kushina with a conflicted look. She attempts to reassure herself, insisting this is the right decision for him. But her thoughts are derailed by a sudden, horrifying sight. Kushina is grinning, a wide, unsettling smile that feels entirely out of place. Runa is completely thrown, demanding to know what's amusing about crushing a child's dreams. He tries to reference a saying about smiling, but she retorts that his grin would scare off demons. Yet his eyes reveal a different narrative, one of a boy yearning for happiness. For the first time, he has chosen a path that doesn't involve conflict. Later that day, they discover an inn to rest, as the town settles for the night. Kushina sits up in bed, the morning light doing little to lift his mood. He stretches with a yawn, commenting on how well he slept for once. But his tranquil morning is shattered by a sudden, terrified scream. He turns to see Runa being consumed by her own bed, which has transformed into a monster. The innkeeper calmly explains she was testing a new mimic bed feature. Customer feedback has been mixed. Runa struggles against the slime, pondering what might have happened if she had been devoured. Kushina, however, remains unfazed, finding his own monster bed surprisingly cozy. The creature even seems to enjoy his presence, playfully tapping his face with a slimy tendril. It reminds him of a joyful memory, leaving Runa utterly perplexed by his reaction. Later, as they descend the stairs, Runa outlines their plan to visit the market. She proposes they explore the town, hoping he might finally discover something intriguing in this world. Kushina reflects on her words, finally getting a chance to understand the world. Their peaceful moment is abruptly interrupted by the sound of heavy footsteps approaching. Startled, they both turn as their way is suddenly obstructed. A squad of town guards stands in front of them, their faces stern and unyielding. The captain accuses them of assaulting fellow adventurers and stealing their monster kills. He proclaims that if they are found guilty after a trial, the penalty will be death. That certainly grabs Kushina's attention. The scene shifts to an oddly cheerful Runa, introducing herself like a TV presenter. Yet the truth is far less glamorous as she tearfully reveals a segment on isekai food. Their first meal as convicts consists of a meager tray of bread and thin soup. Runa bites into the prison bread, commenting that it feels like a rock. She examines the slice, questioning its dubious quality. To her horror, the other side is covered in vibrant, colorful mold. So much for luxury. In disgust, she hurls it against the wall, exclaiming that the hidden flavor isn't hidden at all. A small rat-like creature scurries over, curious about the discarded food. It takes a bite and promptly collapses, foaming at the mouth. Defeated, Runa opts for the watery soup instead. She takes a sip, only to find it's just tasteless hot water. Runa shakes the bars of their cell, completely at her wit's end. Kushina calmly observes that this is his first experience in a cage, provoking an angry response from Runa. A hooded guard patrols the corridor, ordering the noisy prisoners to be quiet. Runa desperately argues their case, insisting they aren't criminals. Meanwhile, Kushina happily munches on the moldy bread, finding it surprisingly tasty. His taste buds are certainly unique. The guard returns, shouting that criminals get what they deserve. He threatens to toss them into a punishment cell devoid of light. But another guard arrives, telling his partner to stop pretending to be vigilant. He drags the hooded man away, instructing him to quit loitering near the cells. The truth comes to light. With enough money, even prisoners can enjoy luxury. Runa realizes the guards' threats were merely a show to intimidate them. She despairs, knowing that if this continues, they'll be permanently labeled as criminals. Runa's hand glows as she discovers she possesses a skill of her own. Recalling her ability to create objects, she manifests a simple spoon. She tells Kushina they must use their skills to find a way out of this prison. But just as her escape plan is about to unfold, a guard's heavy boot halts outside their cell. He announces that a summons has arrived from the church. Their trial is about to begin. They are escorted from the dungeon to a grand, imposing courthouse in the town's center. Inside, they find themselves in the defendant's box, facing a judge and a packed gallery. The crowd consists of the very townspeople they had hoped to meet. All eyes are on them, the two outsiders now labeled as dangerous criminals. The judge, a stern man with a long white beard, calls the court to order. When asked for his details, Kushina can only admit he has no permanent address. The judge then turns to Runa, who proudly states her full name, Runa Kakyoin. The name stirs the crowd, who murmur about her foreign background. Kushina finally pieces it together, recalling her family's motto about never shedding tears. He turns to her, confessing he had been curious about her last name. With a small, genuine smile, he tells her that Kakyoin is a cool name. Runa is left completely flustered, her composure shattered by the simple compliment. Their moment is interrupted as the judge demands the defendants show some respect. Runa turns away, unable to conceal her embarrassment from Kushina's remark. The judge explains that their fate lies in the hands of a jury selected from the citizens. No pressure. Kushina fidgets in the defendant's box, feeling out of place in this unfamiliar setting. The judge's tone is somber as he outlines the consequences of a guilty verdict for robbery. Death looms over them, a word that sends a shiver through Runa. Kushina, however, seems to view the death sentence as a potential career option. Next, the judge summons the captain of the guard to lay out the case details. The captain details the charges. They assaulted fellow adventurers and stole their rewards. Runa's anger flares, questioning who could have fabricated such an obvious falsehood. The crowd shifts, revealing the accuser, the very girl they had turned away. Both Runa and Kushina are stunned, instantly recognizing the child. He realizes this is her way of getting back at them for rejecting her quest, a harsh reminder that good deeds often go unpunished. Runa erupts in fury, demanding the so-called victim be brought forward. The girl simply instructs them to look, confirming she is the one who filed the report. The judge interjects, his face serious as he refocuses on them. The captain presents a bag of coins they supposedly earned, an absurdly large amount for just one day. The judge acknowledges the evidence, but a single word suggests a contradiction. A witness is called to discuss the typical earnings of adventurers. He places 2 small coins on the table, representing the average pay for a day of hunting monsters. The judge notes the stark difference between their earnings and what is usual. Even the townspeople murmur among themselves, sensing something feels off. But Runa's thoughts race, and she suddenly spots the flaw in the prosecution's argument. The judge admits that while large bounties exist, they are typically for well-prepared teams. He points out that these 2 newcomers somehow achieved this on their own. Runa shouts back, claiming it's impossible. They must have cheated to gain such wealth. The crowd begins to murmur, their own doubts now echoed by the defendant. The gallery erupts, branding them thieves and a threat to the entire town. Runa freezes, realizing her outburst has only worsened their predicament. The captain of the guard smirks, knowing the impression of guilt is now firmly established. She realizes that with the jury of citizens against them, the truth no longer matters. A wave of dread washes over her. She's losing grip on the trial. She finally shouts the trial's critical flaw. This entire process is a farce without a real victim. Runa points accusingly, demanding to know if the girl fabricated the report. She leans in, shouting that there's no victim to even present. But her outburst only earns her the sharp ends of several guard spears. She freezes, realizing she just made their situation infinitely worse. The judge calmly states that a victim isn't required for suspicion to exist. He informs her that the burden of proof lies with them to persuade the jury. Runa's mind spins. They're being punished for excelling at their job. So much for fairness. She turns to Kushina, pleading for him to defend himself against the lies. But Kushina stays silent, his head lowered in deep thought. He's lost in a memory, recalling how his parents always suspected him of being a thief. Runa desperately tries to catch his attention, urging him to remain quiet. But Kushina suddenly rises and strides toward the center of the courtroom. He calmly asserts that if they doubt he was the one who defeated the monster, he'll gladly demonstrate his strength right here and now. Runa panics, realizing his well-intentioned display is only digging their grave deeper. The judge merely clears his throat, unfazed by the strange proposal. He turns to the jury, inquiring if they have reached a conclusion. The jurors glance at each other, weighing the guilt of the 2 outsiders. They whisper among themselves, their minds already made up. And the verdict is unmistakable. These 2 simply cannot be trusted. Runa is drenched in sweat, fully grasping the severity of their predicament. The courtroom leans heavily towards a guilty decision, and her time is slipping away. Kushina offers a quiet apology, feeling utterly powerless in this unfamiliar fight. Runa coldly responds that it's all right. She never counted on his assistance. Her words strike him deeper than any physical assault could. He reflects on his abilities, a burden he still struggles to accept. Yet he recalls a moment when his power brought her joy. He wonders if he briefly lost himself in that uplifting sensation. Runa tightens her fist, blaming that very power for their current predicament. She understands justice is a rare commodity here, but she refuses to surrender. Runayan shouts at him, urging him not to succumb to this ridiculous charge. Her fervent appeal finally penetrates his wall of despair. She faces the court, asserting there's not a scrap of evidence against them. Runa accuses them of being ready to execute based on mere empty justice. Her statements resonate, causing the jury to waver in their certainty. Kushina observes, realizing her voice has dramatically altered the courtroom's atmosphere. He watches her fight valiantly alone against the entire town. He wishes her words would reach them, but the odds are clearly against her. The jury murmurs their bias is evident. Outsiders rarely escape a guilty verdict. Yet Kushina senses a shift. He wants to experience more of this world before his end. Additionally, Kushina realizes he can use his power to break free. Meanwhile, Runa remains restrained by the guards, unable to escape. He tightens his fists, aware that his adversaries are not monsters, but humans. He resolves to act, ensuring he holds back against these fragile beings. Instead of targeting the guards, he directs his fist at a colossal stone gargoyle. The entire courtroom gasps, fearing the statue might spring to life. Even the girl who made the accusation stares in wide-eyed terror. Kushina's fist strikes, sending a shockwave through the solid stone. The gargoyle is hurled from its position, soaring across the courtroom. It crashes through the grand doors, tumbling into the street. The stone creature flies through the air, a testament to Kushina's raw might. Inside, he's encircled, using a guard spear to shield Runa. But horror washes over him as he realizes he couldn't restrain himself. He surveys the devastation, understanding he miscalculated his own immense power. Outside, the gargoyle's stone eyes crack open. This is no mere statue anymore. The creature rises, a living nightmare birthed from the courthouse wall. So much for a quiet getaway. Kushina stares in shock, questioning how he managed to conjure this beast. He attempts to clarify that his plan was simply to incapacitate the guards and flee. However, he concedes that a giant monster's sudden emergence wasn't in the blueprint. He clenches his fist, realizing he failed to rein in his power with dire consequences. A chilling realization dawns on him. Had he struck a person, they would be dead. The terrifying truth settles in. He lacks control over this monstrous strength. A guard cautiously approaches, inquiring if he sustained any injuries amid the chaos. But Kushina simply grins, snapping the guard's spear effortlessly. He laments that with this power, he can't even pet a kitten anymore. Priorities, I suppose. But the turmoil is interrupted by the sound of heavy armored footsteps. A young blonde adventurer arrives, surprised to find a gargoyle in town. He appears more intrigued than frightened by the sudden appearance of the monster. A boy in the crowd shouts his name, Agate. The townspeople rush to him, their fear transforming into relief at the hero's presence. The guard can't believe Runa doesn't recognize the town's local celebrity. A boy from the area boasts that Agate is the strongest adventurer around. The crowd is relaxed, confident their hero can handle a simple gargoyle. Kushina observes the creature flying away, puzzled by its ongoing pursuit. Agate glances at Kushina, inquiring if he was the one who took down the beast. The hero scratches his head, trying to recall the reason for the trial. The townsfolk clarify the situation, explaining the enormous bounty they received. Agate pays close attention, piecing together the trial and Kushina's raw strength. He ponders whether they were accused of robbing stronger adventurers. Laughter erupts from the crowd, now convinced the trial was utterly absurd. The crowd warns them against causing further trouble. Tension still lingers. Yet, fear has shifted to indifference. The townspeople just want them gone. Runa is furious, outraged by their nonchalant attitude after the sham trial. Agate faces the judge, calmly questioning if anyone was truly harmed. The young accuser can only stutter, her false bravado completely shattered. Agate simply grins, complimenting the girl on her apparent courage. An interesting tactic. Runa attempts to clarify, reminding everyone this began with the girl's quest. The girl looks at Agate, quietly asking if he can just make this mess disappear. Runa understands her words hold no weight. Her forgiveness means nothing here. Agate just smiles, telling the girl the final choice rests with her. The guard captain entrusts the matter to Agate's capable hands. Agate casually notes that while it was a hassle, they're no longer facing execution. Still, Runa's face is clouded with skepticism and doubt. She wonders how a monster could breach such fortified defenses. This entire scenario feels staged, and she can't shake that feeling. Agate turns back with a knowing grin, asking if it all seems a bit too convenient. He cheerfully invites them to follow him, much to his own confusion. He then points directly at Kushina, insisting he must come along too. Nearby, two scavengers scheme to pilfer parts from the gargoyle for quick cash. but when they look up, they find their prize has vanished along with the adventurers. Elsewhere, a man with an eye patch proudly displays a monster horn, yet his satisfaction quickly turns to shock as something unbelievable occurs. The horn in his grasp suddenly morphs into a worthless stick. The scene shifts to a quiet, desolate graveyard on the town's outskirts. A robed woman sits among the gravestones, waiting with a somber look. Agate arrives with Kushina and Runa cheerfully calling out to the woman. She looks up, relief flooding her as she confirms their plan succeeded. Runa feels completely out of the loop as Agate suggests proper introductions. He introduces himself and his companion, an adventurer named Ricard. Looks like it was all a setup. Ricard humbly deflects the accolades, asserting Agate is the town's true champion. Runa realizes this is why Agate enjoys such trust from the townsfolk. Agate smiles, recalling how she suspected the situation was far too convenient. He cheerfully admits the chaotic trial was a performance they orchestrated. Ricard confirms that the gargoyle was merely a convincing illusion. Agate explains their strategy was simply to create a diversion to facilitate their escape. Kushina is amazed they cleared his name with such a dramatic display. Yet he laments that his great power has robbed him of the right to pet kittens, a true tragedy. His mind drifts back to a memory of a small dog, a reminder of his lost gentleness. Runa tells them to ignore him, completely fed up with his strange tangents. She concedes the gargoyle appeared real, but Ricard points out it was merely wood. Ricard points out her abilities have limitations, explaining why the fake creature was so simplistic. Runa is taken aback, confessing she was completely deceived by the wooden figure. Agate chuckles, pleased that their scheme to rescue them succeeded. Kushina, however, remains stoic, his face betraying no joy. His gaze sharpens as he contemplates their intricate and suspiciously timely rescue. He looks down at the two adventurers, demanding to understand their true intentions. Runa snaps back to the moment, realizing he raises a valid concern. Kushina notes that no one would plan a prison break for total strangers. He urges them to drop the charade and explain their real motives. No such thing as a free pass, after all. Agate's friendly facade falters, replaced by a knowing, almost predatory smirk. Agate concedes that Kushina was astute to see through their deception, leaving Runa speechless. He then discloses their actual goal, presenting a sketch of a gigantic ancient tree. Meanwhile, two guards atop the town wall stumble upon the same flyer, dismissing it as litter. A closer inspection reveals a staggering bounty far exceeding anything they've encountered. One guard gestures toward the horizon, where the very tree looms large. The younger guard is astonished to discover that the tree is deemed a monster. It's referred to as the immortal leaf tree, a plant-based creature of immense age and strength. The senior guard elaborates that it has stood for millennia, with its sap being a crucial magical ingredient. He clarifies that this is a collection mission explaining the astronomical reward. The younger guard fantasizes about easy riches, but his partner cautions him against foolishness. The guard explains that harvesting from the tree means facing the formidable monsters it attracts. He grimly notes that this quest isn't merely about collection, it demands a sacrifice. Back in the present, the four adventurers stand before the towering ancient tree. Agate finally discloses their strategy while they gather the sap. Lucasina's role is to act as bait, the sacrifice to distract the monsters. Quite the job offer. Kushina turns to Runa, questioning if she's truly comfortable with this setup. He appears torn, his newfound determination already being challenged. He just resolved to stop courting death, and now this perfect chance has arisen. He gazes up at the tree, fully aware that Runa is intrigued by its magical sap. Runa concedes that as a magic user, the material is alluring, but she's clearly conflicted. Kushina recalls his powerlessness during the trial, admitting he was utterly helpless. He remembers how Runa fought for them when he couldn't do anything. Deciding that fighting is his only skill, he agrees to take on the role. Agate affirms his choice, while Runa watches with concern. The hero reflects that labeling the task a sacrifice sounds rather grim. Yet he clarifies that this is the official term for anyone undertaking this mission. Ricard outlines the plan. Injuring the tree will provoke it to attack with its roots. Kushina's role is to withstand the assault until they've gathered enough sap. A glorified, unkillable punching bag. Agate cheerfully announces it's time to begin, holding up a peculiar root. He crushes it, asserting that a demonstration beats a lengthy explanation. A large clay pot is secured to the tree, poised to collect the precious sap. Agate draws his sword, the blade shimmering in the dim light. Without hesitation, he swings the weapon with practiced skill. The sword sinks deep into the ancient bark of the immortal leaf tree. A thick, dark liquid starts to seep from the fresh gash. The valuable sap drips slowly, one drop at a time, into the waiting pot. Runa wonders how long this tedious collection will actually take. But Agate's head jerks up, sensing the ground tremble beneath them. The earth fractures and splits as a deep rumble resonates through the forest. Massive roots burst from the ground, the tree itself striking out in rage. So much for a simple collection mission. Runa screams, overwhelmed by the sudden ferocity of the tree's attack. Kushina is already in motion, obliterating a massive root with a single forceful punch. He remains steadfast, prepared for more as Runa watches, speechless. The wooden tendril shatters into countless fragments from the impact of his strike. Yet, for every root he demolishes, a dozen more descend from above. Runa inquires of Agate whether the assault will cease, but he confirms it won't. He clarifies that the roots will persistently assault the sacrifice until the task is complete. Ricard struggles with the sap collection, while Runa realizes she's on duty too. So much for just supervising. Agate suddenly yells, his friendly demeanor vanishing. He proclaims with fierce determination that he won't allow anyone to become a sacrifice. Aged explains this is exactly why he required Kushina's extraordinary strength. Ricard wields her enormous scythe, pledging that they will all fight as one. The crystal in her weapon starts to radiate a brilliant glow. She releases a powerful surge of energy, cutting through the attacking roots. Runa can only gaze in wonder, witnessing true, formidable magic for the first time. As he continues his assault, Kushina questions how long he must endure this. Runa discovers the harsh reality. Filling just one pot will consume an entire night. Agate chuckles, explaining the tree will slow down after sunset, giving them a chance to rest. It's less of a sprint, more of a marathon of getting battered. With a look of grim resolve, Runa acknowledges she has no option but to fight. Agate concedes that without their assistance, he and Ricard would have been overwhelmed. Agate shouts that they're relying on Kushina's power, urging him to return alive. Kushina quietly agrees, stating he'll do his utmost to repay their aid. Ricard rallies the team, instructing them to hold out until the sun finally sets. Hours drag on as the fierce, unyielding battle rages deep into the night. Runa is utterly exhausted, gasping for breath as the relentless fight takes its toll. As the roots finally begin to slow, the weary team gets a much-needed moment of respite. Runa grumbles that their strategy was reckless, one misstep away from total disaster. Even Agate has to concede that this particular task is far from easy. Ricard explains that most of the town's other adventurers are already injured. Agate reveals the culprit, the very wind tiger they were warned about. He explains a massive force was once assembled to hunt the beast. Agate admits he and Ricard were part of that ill-fated expedition. The outcome was a total disaster, leaving a field strewn with fallen warriors. The wind tiger proved far more formidable than anyone had anticipated. Many perished in the conflict, and the few who survived were left with debilitating injuries. He reveals he was among them, narrowly escaping with his life. Agate acknowledges that without Ricard's healing magic, he would have met his end. She was the sole barrier between him and certain death. Even now, Ricard struggles to cast pain-numbing spells just to keep them going. Runa observes his arm regenerating, scolding him for fighting while still injured. Some people just lack patience for recovery. Kushina listens quietly, the pieces of their desperate plan falling into place. Agate brushes off his injuries, claiming it's a waste to use magic on him. He struggles to rise, insisting he can still move and fight. Ricard reveals the town's healers can't treat the injured without more magical supplies. The crystal on her weapon serves as a constant reminder of their dwindling resources. Kushina realizes they were aware of his power and brought him here for a purpose. Agate's determined gaze affirms their desperate gamble. He explains that as a survivor, he believes this is his sacred obligation. The burden of his fallen comrades weighs heavily in the air, and it all hinges on this precious sap, the key to healing the town. Kushina's fist tightens, a quiet determination solidifying inside him. As dawn breaks, Agate commands a full retreat. The team narrowly escapes the tree's fury. At last, they reach the town's protective walls, leaving the long night behind. Exhausted, Runa leans on Agate, who proudly displays their hard-earned trophy. She notes that Kushina, the one who fought the hardest, appears completely unscathed. He confesses that fatigue no longer affects him, a skill he secretly envies. Agate expresses regret for involving them in his troubles, yet he's thankful for their support. However, Ricard gazes at the lone pot of sap, realizing it's far from sufficient. Runa understands that with more falling ill, they must venture out again. Agate validates her concerns, but Runa appears to be contemplating an alternative. Runa proposes a daring plan: give her all the sap. Ricard gasps in shock, exclaiming that they can't part with their sole lifeline. She clarifies that the sap is essential for the numerous injured who lack treatment. Yet Runa dismisses their current strategy as utterly insufficient. She stands firm, prepared to take charge of this dire predicament. She urges them to invest their scarce resources in her for a far greater payoff.